One of the major things that I've noticed in today's society or world, particularly like Western culture, is that we live in a world that has been louder than ever. And what do I mean by that? I mean our attention and focus, which I believe to be some of our biggest and most valuable commodities, is being threatened daily, constantly. So whether it be from people, from phones, advertisements, there's literally something always trying to grab our attention. So you might ask yourself, like, what is necessarily wrong with that? So I don't think there's anything wrong per se, but I think when our attention is being grabbed from all angles, when we're unaware, it does have some negative consequences, I feel. And not only is this noise in our day-to-day lives, you know, if we're at work, if we're training, if we're with a friend, if we're with family, it's also in moments of rest as well. So imagine the times just before you're trying to go to sleep, you're still being bombarded with all of these things. People are still messaging you. No need to hate them, guys. But people are still messaging you. You're still seeing adverts on your phone. You're on Instagram, you're scrolling. TikTok, you're scrolling. You're constantly taking in information that isn't necessarily coming from you. You know, there's beliefs being thrust upon you that aren't yours. And eventually what happens is that we start to take on these beliefs and make them our own. So when we are in a particular circumstance and, you know, a topic comes up that we've recently looked at, and we've kind of accepted that belief from someone else's viewpoint, we then accept it as our own. And now this isn't always bad, because sometimes those beliefs do actually align with our true values and what we actually believe in. But sometimes we don't always have an opinion on something. We haven't actually truly thought it through. What do we actually think? And you know those times when you actually say to someone, you might be mid-conversation, you say something, and then you're like, ooh, why did I say that? You know, this is us going off script, so to speak. So yes, I say all that to say, our world is incredibly loud, and what happens is that our own voice in the process gets drowned out. And what is the issue with this is when we try to seek answers, we always go external. We always seek other people's opinions, other people's theories, philosophies, beliefs. And we never really trust our own. We never turn inward as a first point of call, which I think is an issue. So what works for someone else might not necessarily work for us. We're always seeking external validation, so to speak, and other proven methods that have worked for other people. But the truth is, everyone is an individual. Everyone is unique. Everyone needs some sort of different method. And this is where Regime comes in. So I am the founder of Regime and the Regime method. Regime is a framework that helps us build our own path rather than just replicating someone else's. And there's a lot of power in that. And for me personally, I don't know about you guys, but when I first started my self-development journey, which would have been, I suppose, very intentionally as well, intentionally started my self-development journey would have been just over a year ago now from this point. It was very daunting. I had no idea where to start. People would say phrases to me like, you just need to do the work. I'm just like, yeah, that's great. I want to do the work, but how? Like, what work are you actually talking about here? So yeah, again, it's very daunting, and it just makes it more of an issue than it actually is. Like, you know, the answer to this is very, very simple, and it's simply to just turn inwards. And even me saying this to you now, you're just like, okay, what does that even mean? Right, so here's where Regime comes in. Regime here provides a baseline. You know, it tells you where to start, and it guides you through this whole process, which is completely adaptable to you. So it's unique to everyone. So what one person's reflection will look like will look completely different to someone else's. And again, it's amazing. It's incredible to see, and it's something that I really want to spread. I've been a fitness professional for the last 7 to 8 years, and I've bounced around a few different gyms. Most notable for me personally would be Fitness Hub 21, which is a boutique gym based in Winchmore Hill in North London. They are still running. Lisa, if you're watching this, I still love your work, and I really appreciate the time that I got to spend in your space. It's really honed me as a coach, and you know, some of the things that you taught me from back then I still hold on to now, such as delivering the most and best hour of a client's day, you know, make it the best part of their day. So yes, I've been a personal trainer for the last 7 or 8 years, and what I've noticed from having all of these clients over the years is that they all come to me with such beautiful intentions. You know, it could be just down to like kind of like your shallow aspects of just wanting to look better. And even that, in a sense, is not that shallow, because obviously there's a whole knock-on effect, isn't there? You're going to feel more confident, and that means you're going to feel more confident at work, in relationships, around family. You're going to be able to delve into your purpose a lot easier than if you weren't as confident in yourself. So again, that in itself is huge. You know, it could just have been, you know, to become fitter, a better version of yourself. Others would come to me and they said, I just want to have more energy for my kids. Like I find that when I come home from work, I've just got no energy and I can't spend the time that I want with my kids. You know, I want to go to the park, I want to go on activities, I want to take them here, there, and just, I want to be able to run circles around my kids and be like, yeah, I'm that guy, I'm the boss, you know? But for some reason, something along the way, that energy slowly dissipates. You know, the intent is still there, but for whatever reason, the actions that follow over a longer period of time start to revert back. So that initial drive of what brought them in and brought them to me would start to fade. And overall, their actions would stop reflecting their intentions. So the real question is, what is it really that causes that sort of gap, that bridge to widen? You know, you started off incredibly well, you've got a plan, you've got a coach, you've kind of got all of the materials needed in order to succeed in that particular area, right? So why do we end up going backwards? It's not the discipline, it's not the effort that's being put in, because, you know, every one of my clients, when they're in their sessions, they're putting in 100%, if not more. You know, they're like, Gabriel, like, you are evil. I mean, I'm always laughing. If you've ever had a session with me, then you know what I'm talking about. I will be laughing and joking while you lots are in pain. It is great, but I mean it for the best. I mean, it's for your betterment, really and truly, isn't it? So yeah, it's not their lack of effort or discipline. You know, every single one of these people want this end goal badly. So why do they then fade off? Like, why does it then drop off at some point? For me, this was a bit of a signal warning. There was a deeper meaning to this, something that I didn't quite understand. I didn't feel like I had the tools to even allow someone to progress any further. Like, me as their coach, if I don't have the answers to this, then obviously it's my duty to go out and find out the answer so I can help them through this transformation. So the sad truth is that traditional personal training only targets one dimension of development, the physical. But real lasting change requires 3 dimensions, and that is the physical, the mind, and the will, or the spirit. So for me, this is where personal training, at least traditional personal training, falls a little short. It doesn't quite hit all 3 dimensions. And you know, the same could be said for my life. I saw the same patterns in my own life as well. You know, I was working incredibly long hours, but me filling up my days with, let's say, just motion and no meaning meant that I wasn't getting the results that I truly wanted. So, you know, you always get a result. So no matter what you do, there's always going to be some sort of an after effect, right? There's always some sort of consequence, whether it be positive or negative. So you will get a result, but this might not necessarily be the result that you want. So it's just like, how do we then direct the results that we want? In summary, you could say I was disciplined, but not directed. I was doing all of the right things on paper, but right things for what? I eventually reached a point where the misalignment that I was experiencing was just too blatant to ignore. I could either stay where I was and ruminate, or I could change. And I chose the latter. I chose to change. So instead of letting it become a sort of like downfall and kind of like rock bottom, which, I mean, it still is, but once you reach rock bottom, then you've got nowhere to go but up, right? Very cliche, I know, but there is a lot of truth in it. So it became my breakthrough as opposed to just a downfall. This is where everything changed for me personally. So yes, we have effort on one side, but there's no amount of effort that can replace the need for clarity. We need both together in order to move forwards. So you could be working as hard as you like, but if it's misdirected or with no direction at all, then you're going to end up with haphazard results. Results that you don't necessarily want, but you'll end up with a result regardless, if you see what I'm saying. But then you've got clarity on the other side. So if you know where you're going to go, then you can direct this crazy effort and discipline that you all have because you've built your business. You know, you've started it, you've had an idea and you've acted on it. You've been going to the gym for the last 6 months, 3 days a week. Although you might not be seeing the exact change that you wanted to, you've still been doing it, right? You've changed your diet. You've, you know, reduced your sugar intake and you've increased your whole food intake. You eat more protein, drinking more water. All of these things, all of these changes that you've made requires some form of discipline and will and intention. But the long road ahead is that you now need that clarity. Like what are you really doing this for, and where's it gonna go? What version of you does all of these things, and why? There's a quote that oftentimes pops into my head. Every now and again, it's strange, but the quote goes something like this: necessity is the mother of invention. And for me, that resonates, and there's nothing different here in my case either. You know, during my downtime, during my kind of like rock bottom moment, it was either I stay where I was and kind of like sink into the abyss even further, or I climb out and I rise up. And I chose the latter. So this is where Reygime was born. This breakthrough moment was where Reygime was born. I needed to find a way to solve my problems, to change my thinking, to change my situation, to change my reality, as it were. Reygime is the framework that I built for myself to bridge the gap between intention and action. Or in other words, between knowing what we want and then actually living it. So everything that I do from now on, all of my work is centered around building that bridge within ourselves. What can you expect from the channel? This is going to be a space for us to basically study clarity and transformation. And I'm going to do this by sharing stories to reveal patterns in our lives, parables that carry lessons, and my own genuine personal reflections to invite any sort of depth, questioning, and introspection. Maybe in time, I'll invite guests over to just have some conversations about the bigger picture of the world. So I look forward to it all. And then rarely, every now and again, I'll share some snippets of my own personal life as well, featuring things like fitness, nutrition, and then just everyday life, really. I do believe any sort of philosophy means nothing without having actually lived it as well. And lastly, if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you. Thank you for your time. I really, really do appreciate it. Please do make sure you like, subscribe, and share as well if you found that has resonated. If something in you knows it's time to build with intention, then welcome to Reygime. This will be the space where clarity becomes a way of life. I'll see you next time.